Welcome to Grimfire.
Money doesn't speak loudly at the top. It whispers behind locked doors. While everybody else is busy chasing trends, posting fake victories, and begging for validation, there's another world operating in silence. A world where billionaires don't gamble on luck. They gamble on people, patterns, pressure, potential. And somehow, your name started appearing in conversations you were never supposed to hear, not because you're famous, not because you're rich, but because you survived things that would have mentally destroyed most people. They noticed the way you move after betrayal, the way you stay calm when everything burns around you, the way people underestimate you until it's too late. That kind of energy attracts attention in rooms normal people don't even know exist. See, powerful circles don't care about popularity. They care about usefulness, influence, psychological endurance. They study reactions more than resumes. They watch who folds under pressure and who starts smiling when chaos arrives. And lately, the spotlight shifted toward you in a way that should probably concern a few people. Bond. Because once elite minds become curious about you, life changes in strange ways. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. Certain people suddenly fear you without understanding why. Doors open silently while other doors slam shut in your face. It feels random at first, almost paranoid, until the patterns become impossible to ignore. Most people think billionaires control the world with money. That's cute. Money is just the tool. Information is the weapon. Human behavior is the real currency. And the terrifying part? They've already made decisions about millions of people before those people even realized the game had started. Damnland, you thought you were struggling alone. You thought your pain was invisible. But every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment you stayed silent instead of breaking apart, it built a psychological profile that caught attention somewhere far above your reality, somewhere hidden behind private meetings, encrypted calls, and expensive smiles that never reach the eyes. And now the atmosphere around you feels different. Friends act strange. Enemies move carefully. Even failures don't hit the same anymore. Almost like something shifted behind the curtain without your permission. Almost like somebody important looked at your future and decided not to stop you anymore. Most people think powerful people are impressed by talent. That's adorable. Talent is everywhere. Social media is overflowing with talented people, dancing for attention, like trained circus animals, screaming for approval from strangers who forget them 5 seconds later. Real power doesn't care about performance. Real power watches pressure, because pressure is the only thing that strips the mask off a human being. Anybody can look confident when life is easy. Anybody can smile when money is flowing, friends are loyal, and the world is clapping for them. But introduce betrayal, humiliation, isolation. Suddenly the performance starts glitching, voices shake, eyes change, personalities collapse. That's when the observers start paying attention. Now, see, the people sitting at the top of the pyramid learned something dangerous a long time ago. Human beings reveal their true value only when life corners them like an animal, not during comfort, during suffering. That's why powerful circles don't obsess over your trophies. They obsess over your reactions. Man, how do you behave when everybody leaves? How do you think after failure crushes your ego? Blend, how long can you survive without validation before your mind starts eating itself alive? That's the real interview. Because pain creates two types of people. The first type becomes bitter, emotional, desperate for revenge, easy to manipulate, easy to predict. The second type becomes quieter, sharper, more dangerous. They stop reacting emotionally because suffering trained them to think differently. Those are the people elite minds notice immediately. Pinned. You probably thought your darkest moments were meaningless, that nobody saw the nights you sat alone replaying every betrayal in your head like a broken movie scene. But powerful people understand something ordinary people don't. Survival changes the chemistry of a person, especially psychological survival. Lemdy, a person who survived humiliation without collapsing, becomes emotionally difficult to control. A person who survives loneliness becomes independent from approval. Mendy, a person who survives chaos, develops instincts that can't be taught in classrooms. That kind of person scares people. Laumd, because now they can't predict you anymore, and unpredictable people are either threats or assets. Look carefully at history. The most feared individuals were rarely born into comfort. Comfort creates softness. Struggle creates observation. When life hurts you enough times, your brain adapts in disturbing ways. You start reading rooms faster. You notice fake smiles instantly. You hear insecurity hiding behind confidence. Your survival instincts sharpen until people begin feeling uncomfortable around you without understanding why. That's what pressure does. It transforms awareness into a weapon. The terrifying part is, most people break before reaching that stage. They want escape more than growth. They numb themselves with distractions, addictions, fake relationships, empty entertainment, anything to avoid confronting themselves. But the rare few who sit inside the chaos long enough without mentally surrendering, they evolve differently, and those people become impossible to ignore, not because they're loud, because they radiate emotional control. Man, you ever notice how truly dangerous people rarely panic? That calm energy isn't natural. It was earned through psychological warfare against reality itself. They've already experienced internal battles most people couldn't survive. So external problems stop looking impressive to them. That changes everything. The way they speak changes. The way they stare at people changes. Even silence around them feels heavy, and powerful circles notice energy before status. They can sense when somebody has developed mental endurance through suffering, because endurance is profitable. Endurance creates leaders, strategists, survivors. Anybody can make money once, but maintaining power through pressure, that requires a completely different nervous system. That's why some people get ignored their entire lives, while others mysteriously attract opportunities after surviving devastating periods. Nobody clapped for. Pain either erased them or refined them into something colder and more focused. And maybe that's what's happening to you right now. Maybe the pressure wasn't punishment. Bamda. Maybe life was studying your reactions, watching whether you'd fold like everybody else, or become the type of individual who keeps moving forward with scars hidden behind a smile that doesn't fully look human anymore. Most people walk through life thinking success is about intelligence, degrees, connections, fancy words, expensive suits, pretending to hide insecurity. But the people operating behind real wealth learned something terrifying a long time ago. Intelligence alone is useless if the mind collapses under pressure. Planned. That's why elite circles secretly study psychology more than talent. Not publicly, of course. The world would panic if it understood how deeply powerful people analyze human behavior. They don't just watch what you say. They study timing, Emotional reactions, patterns, silence, eye contact, impulse control. They observe how long you can function under stress before desperation leaks through your mask, because desperation is expensive. Dramda, a desperate person can't be trusted. A desperate person panics too fast. Mengda, desperate person sells their dignity the moment pressure tightens around their throat. And the people at the top, they avoid emotional instability like poison. That's why the first psychological trait they secretly value is emotional control. Not fake calmness, real emotional discipline, the kind built through suffering. Anybody can pretend to be composed for 5 minutes, but maintaining control while life humiliates you publicly, while people betray you, while uncertainty slowly eats at your mind every night, that's rare. Banged people with emotional control become terrifying because they stop reacting the way society expects. Insults don't break them. Delays don't shake them. Chaos doesn't distract them. They observe before responding. And observation creates advantage. Lumbed, that alone makes people uncomfortable. Then comes adaptability. See, weak minds need stability to function. They panic when the environment changes. But powerful circles look for people who can adapt psychologically without losing focus. Because markets crash, empires shift, alliances disappear overnight, the world is unstable by nature, so a rigid mind becomes a liability. Men adaptable. People survive longer because they evolve faster than circumstances. Planged. That's why some individuals walk through disasters, like they expected the chaos before it arrived. They learned how to emotionally detach from outcomes. Not because they don't care, but because survival trained them to stay flexible while everybody else freezes in fear. And fear exposes everything. Mend. Another trait elite minds quietly obsess over is isolation tolerance. Now that one scares people, blind, most humans are addicted to attention. They need constant validation just to feel real. Likes, messages, approval, noise. Without it, their identity starts collapsing. But somebody who can survive isolation without mentally breaking becomes difficult to manipulate. Thamda. Because now loneliness can't be used against them. That changes the entire power dynamic. A person comfortable alone thinks differently. They stop chasing acceptance. They stop begging for permission. Their decisions become colder, more logical, more independent. And independence is dangerous in systems designed around obedience. That's why powerful people secretly respect individuals who survived periods of complete psychological isolation and came back sharper instead of weaker. Damned. Then there's pattern recognition. Oh, that one matters more than people realize. Elite minds love people who notice what others ignore. Tiny inconsistencies, behavioral shifts, hidden motives. Most people only react to visible reality. But certain individuals can sense changes before events happen. They detect emotional energy, predict betrayals, read manipulation in real time. It almost looks paranoid to ordinary people, until those instincts keep proving accurate. Danged. That ability usually comes from pain. Suffering forces observation. Bound. When trust breaks enough times, your brain starts analyzing everything for survival. Tone changes, facial expressions, delayed responses, forced smiles. You become hyper-aware because life conditioned you to expect hidden danger behind appearances. And honestly, Powerful circles value that awareness more than blind optimism, because optimists are easy to fool, observers are not. Then comes the final trait almost nobody talks about: psychological endurance. The ability to keep functioning while emotionally exhausted. That's the one that separates ordinary people from individuals capable of carrying massive responsibility. Because pressure at high levels never disappears. It multiplies. More money creates more enemies. More influence creates more paranoia. More success attracts more fake loyalty. Weak minds shatter there, but people with psychological endurance become strangely calm inside chaos. Not because life became easier, because their nervous system adapted to surviving difficulty. And maybe that's why your life felt so brutally unfair at times. Maybe every betrayal, every lonely night, every painful lesson was shaping psychological traits most people never develop. Traits invisible, but instantly recognizable to people who understand how power really works behind closed doors where smiles are fake. Trust is temporary, and human behavior is worth more than gold. Most people think pain weakens a person. That's because most people only understand surface-level suffering. They see heartbreak, rejection, loneliness, and assume the person experiencing it is falling apart. What they don't understand is that isolation does something strange to certain minds. It doesn't destroy them. It strips unnecessary parts away. And once that process starts, people around you begin feeling the difference before they can explain it. See, silence changes a human being in ways noise never could. When life forces you into isolation, there's nobody left to distract you from yourself. No crowd to perform for. No fake conversations numbing the emptiness. Just you, trapped with your thoughts, while reality slowly peels apart every illusion you used to depend on. Mendy. That's where most people break, because the average person is addicted to escape. Downed. They drown themselves in entertainment, attention, relationships, meaningless routines. Anything to avoid hearing the voice in their own head. But when isolation becomes unavoidable, something terrifying happens. Your mind either collapses under the weight of self-awareness, or evolves beyond the need for constant validation, and powerful people notice the difference immediately. Only a person who survived silence becomes harder to manipulate. Why? Because manipulation usually depends on emotional dependency, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being alone. But once somebody spends enough time in isolation and survives it, those fears lose their grip. Now you move differently. Danger. You stop explaining yourself. You stop begging to be understood. And you stop chasing approval from people who secretly enjoy watching. You doubt yourself. And suddenly your presence starts unsettling people. Not because you became louder, because you became emotionally independent. That kind of energy scares weak minds. People are comfortable around predictable individuals, emotional people, reactive people, people who constantly seek reassurance. But somebody shaped by silence becomes difficult to read. They observe more than they speak. Their reactions slow down. Their emotions become... And when people can't predict your emotional response anymore, they start projecting their own fears onto you. That's why isolation quietly increases your value in ways society never talks about. Pain sharpens observation. Loneliness strengthens self-control. Betrayal improves pattern recognition. Every dark experience forced your mind to adapt psychologically just to survive. You probably thought you were being punished while it was happening. But suffering has a brutal way of refining certain individuals into something more dangerous than confidence, clarity, and clarity. Once you've seen how fake people become under pressure, you stop romanticizing human behavior. Once betrayal teaches you how quickly loyalty disappears, you stop trusting words without actions. Once pain forces you to survive alone, you stop fearing abandonment the way ordinary people do. Tender, that's when your value increases. Not social value, psychological value. The kind elite minds recognize instantly. Blend, because powerful circles know something most people don't. Emotionally dependent individuals are liabilities. They crack too easily. They seek comfort instead of solutions. But somebody forged through isolation develops internal stability. They become self-directed, focused, resistant to manipulation. That's rare, and rare things attract attention. Glands. You ever notice how some people walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts, even when they say nothing? That energy usually comes from suffering nobody witnessed. Silent battles. Psychological wars fought behind closed doors. There's a certain look people develop after surviving enough disappointment without losing their mind completely. Their smile changes, and their eyes change. Even their silence feels heavier, because pain removed the innocence from the way they view reality. And honestly, that makes people nervous, especially fake people, because fake people survive through emotional performances. But somebody who spent years studying human behavior through suffering starts detecting masks too quickly. Forced kindness, manipulative affection, hidden envy behind compliments. It becomes almost impossible to fool them the same way twice. Plain. That awareness creates distance between you and ordinary social behavior. You stop fitting in naturally. You start noticing things others ignore. Conversations feel shallow. Crowds feel exhausting. And while everybody else is desperate to belong somewhere, you quietly become comfortable standing alone. Holland, that's where your value changes completely. Because once a person no longer fears isolation, they become capable of decisions most people would never have the courage to make. They stop tolerating disrespect just to keep company. They stop shrinking themselves to protect fragile egos. They stop chasing people who only love the weaker version of them. And somewhere along the way, silence stopped feeling empty. It started feeling powerful. Your enemies never feared you when you were emotional. That version of you was easy to control, easy to provoke, easy to distract. They understood your reactions back then. They knew which words would hurt you, which situations would break your focus, which insecurities would keep you doubting yourself at 3 a.m. while they slept peacefully. Plunge. That's why they were comfortable around the old you. Because the old you still needed acceptance. Still cared too much, still reacted too quickly, and reactive people are predictable. But something changed. Not suddenly. That's the disturbing part. Transformation like this never happens overnight. It happens quietly through accumulated damage. Betrayal after betrayal. Disappointment after disappointment. Nights where life hit you so hard that your mind stopped expecting fairness from the world entirely. Means that kind of suffering alters a person psychologically. At first, nobody notices. You still smile, still talk normally, and still move through life. pretending everything feels the same. But internally, something cold begins forming beneath the surface. Not hatred, awareness. A dangerous level of emotional clarity that only appears after somebody survives enough pain without completely breaking apart. No? And your enemies sensed it before you even understood it yourself. See, people pay attention to emotional energy more than words. The moment your reaction started changing, the atmosphere around you changed too. Suddenly, arguments stopped affecting you the same way. Insults lost power. Manipulation stopped working. You became calmer during situations that used to emotionally destroy you. And that's when people started getting uncomfortable. Because emotionally independent people are difficult to intimidate. Your enemies expected emotional chaos from you. Anger, begging, explaining, defending yourself endlessly. But instead, you became quieter, more observant, more patient. And patience terrifies manipulative people because patience gives you time to see through them. And that's the moment they realized control was slipping away. Malians, you ever notice how certain people become aggressive the second they can't emotionally influence you anymore? That reaction tells you everything. Weak people feel powerful only when they can control your emotions. The moment you stop reacting the way they expect, panic starts appearing behind their confidence. Bland. Because now they're facing somebody unpredictable, and unpredictable people create psychological pressure without even trying. Lemdia, your enemies notice smaller things too. The way you started watching more than speaking. Tlum. The way your attention stopped chasing approval. The way your silence suddenly carried more weight than their loud performances. That shift frightened them. Not openly, of course. People rarely admit fear directly. Instead, fear disguises itself as criticism, gossip, fake concern, subtle disrespect. Because when insecure people sense somebody evolving beyond their influence, they instinctively try to drag that person back into emotional weakness. But by then, it's usually too late. See, suffering upgraded your awareness. You stopped believing appearances. And you stopped confusing attention with loyalty. You stopped trusting charm without consistency. That alone made you dangerous. And because manipulators survive through illusion, they depend on emotional confusion. But somebody who learned through pain starts detecting hidden motives too quickly. Fake smiles become obvious. Forced support becomes transparent. Envy becomes visible even behind compliments. And once you see people clearly, interacting with them changes forever. And that's why your enemies became more careful around you. They noticed you no longer react impulsively. Mind. No longer reveal every emotion immediately. No longer panic when isolated or misunderstood. Lemda, that emotional stability created uncertainty in their minds. Now, they can't predict your next move, and uncertainty creates fear. Blend, especially among people who once believed they had power over you. The funny part? You probably never intended to intimidate anybody. Survival simply changed your nervous system. After enduring enough chaos internally, external drama starts looking childish. You develop a different relationship with pressure, tolerance for discomfort, while others crumble emotionally over temporary problems. You remain composed because life already forced you through worse situations nobody even knows about. Man, that calmness unsettles people, because calm people are harder to manipulate, harder to read, harder to defeat psychologically. Pinged ya, And somewhere along the way, your enemies realized the version of you they once laughed at no longer exists. The emotionally fragile person they understood disappeared inside the pressure and came back altered, sharper, colder, more controlled, lengthened. Now every interaction feels different. They speak carefully around you. They watch your reactions closely. Banned. Even disrespect becomes quieter because instinctively they know something changed behind your eyes after all the suffering. Something that no longer fears losing people, standing alone, or walking through chaos without permission from anyone around you.